There we go. Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Andrew here from Bowery Mick History. It's Thursday night. That means we're just sitting here talking about some history things. Um, and let's see, what do we got? Last Monday was the Bowery Mick History Halloween special, which went great. I was happy with how it turned out, even though the audio is a little weird, but I'm choosing not to think about that. Anyway, but yeah, that was fun. And this coming Saturday, we're gonna have another game stream. Don't know what it's gonna be yet, but that's it. What else? Oh, this Sunday, provided that I can actually get my shit together in time, will be another new episode of the Bowery Make History podcast, and it's one that I'm extra excited for. Uh, for those who don't know, the podcast has been following this sort of theme throughout the current season. So this season's theme is the American Airborne during World War II. And we're now moving on to the Airborne's place in popular memory. So the next episode is going to be about film portrayals of the American Airborne during World War II, which I'm really excited about because it's something that I really like talking about. Movies and history and whatnot. So yeah, that's hopefully going to be out Sunday. I don't know when exactly on Sunday, but Sunday, maybe. Um, and I've also started work on a new blog post for the Bowery Mick History blog, but I don't know when that's going to be. And I don't know if it's ever going to get finished. Who knows? For every blog post that I end up actually posting, there's about 7 that are never finished. But yeah, that's all I got in terms of like updates and whatnot. So yeah, I had no idea what I was going to do tonight's little talk about initially. Thursday kind of just fucking snuck up on me. But then, oddly enough, thank God for Facebook memories. I was reminded that today is a very important anniversary in history, or somewhat important. Um, Today is the anniversary of the first 3 American soldiers from the American Expeditionary Force during World War One. Today's the anniversary of their deaths. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Gonna turn off studio mode. Anyway, so first 3 Americans killed in action during World War One. Their names were Hay, Gresham, and Enright. They were all members of Company F of the 16th Infantry Regiment in the, at the time, brand spanking new 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. And 1917, November 1917, they were actually on the front lines in a sector near Artois in France. And this was supposed to be a sort of a quiet sector. It was intended, their presence was there as for like training purposes. They were there with another French unit that had already been at the front for several years at that point. They were there kind of learning the ropes, learning what French warfare is and all that. And then early in the morning, or maybe it was late at night, I have to go back and look. The Germans launched a trench raid. And it was very, very like commonplace at that point. It was very like regular strategy that the Germans had been using for a while at that point. Essentially, they just hit both sides of F Company's flanks. They hit both sides with artillery, kind of forcing the company right into the middle to scrunch together. And then they sent the raid in to that middle section while all the confusion was going on. And Hay, Gresham, and Enright were killed in the trench raid. Another about a dozen or so troops from the 16th Regiment were taken prisoner as a result of the raid as well. The United States War Department wasted no time in exploiting the deaths of these three young Americans, and they became symbols of the cause. And as you can see, the picture I have up is an advertisement for essentially war bonds that's using their likeness and their sacrifice as a sort of selling point, like, to sell war bonds and stuff like that. Now, in the aftermath of the war, almost immediately, actually, in 1918, a monument was put up to Hay, Gresham, and Enright. I can never remember their ranks because one of them's a corporal. But a monument was put up near where they were killed, and they were actually all buried. All three of them were initially buried in France for a while. It wasn't until the 1920s that they were actually repatriated to the United States, and General John Pershing, the commander of the American Expeditionary Force, met their caskets when they first arrived in the United States. And a monument was put up to these three men in France, and was there until 1940. It was unfortunately torn down by the Nazis, those sacks of shit. But there actually is still a monument of sorts to these three men. It's on a little island in New York Harbor called Governor's Island. The 16th Infantry Regiment, after World War I, was stationed at Governor's Island. And they were stationed there for about 20 years. And while they were there, they decided to go around naming all the roads on the island. Because it was an active army base, and they needed some sort of sense of direction for the base. And most of the roads, and these roads still carry the names to this very day. Most of the roads were named after officers of the 16th Regiment that were killed in action during World War I. Many of them killed in action while doing something that got them a Distinguished Service Cross, which is the second highest honor you can get as a soldier in the United States military, or as a member of the United States military, or at least the Army. But then there are three roads that are named after these three guys, Hay, Gresham, and Enright. The roads themselves, I think, have been altered significantly, but the markers still remain. In fact, one of them was rededicated, I think in 2017 or 2018. And there's a whole small little representation from the current day 16th Infantry Regiment there for the rededication, which was nice. I actually used to work at Governor's Island when I first entered the National Park Service as an employee, and that was sort of where I got my start. And the story of the 16th Infantry throughout both the World Wars is something that has always been very important to me since working there. And especially the stories of Hay, Gresham, and Enright, because they are... The 16th Infantry felt the need to remember, to memorialize these three guys in the same way that they were memorializing, literal goddamn war heroes, which I always thought was fascinating, and I always thought was very interesting. I always enjoyed telling people about these stories. So yeah, that happened 105 years ago today in France. So that was the thing I had. Let me see if... Did I cover all the points? I have a little list of notes. Yeah, no, I covered all the points. All right. Yep. So, I guess that brings us to the next thing. It's going to be a short episode, but again, this today just snuck up on me. And that is the random history thing of the week. I don't need this up anymore. And that is actually not something I've photographed as I usually do. Instead, it's a book. But it's a book that represents something very interesting. So this came in the mail today. Oh, fuck. The glare. Blood for Dignity. It is about the at least the one of the volunteer infantry platoons during World War II. Uh, these are commonly referred to as fifth platoons in some circles. During World War II, the United States Army had this idea to address its manpower issue on the front lines, and that was to low key integrate. It was during the Battle of the Bulge. The Army needed more guys on the front lines fighting Germans, and so they decided to put out a call for volunteers in the rear echelon units that were made up of all black soldiers. So they got enough volunteers to form, I think the highest count I ever saw that was like somewhat confirmed was about, I think, 37 platoons. A platoon is roughly about, let's say, 30 to 50 on a good day, somewhere in that general range, maybe a little higher, maybe a little lower. And they formed, roughly well over 30 platoons of volunteers from these rear echelon units, and they sent them to all white units, which was most of the units on the front line in Western Europe. And each platoon, at least in most cases, each platoon got assigned to a separate company in a particular regiment in the divisions that got these platoons. And each of the divisions that got these platoons got about 3 of them. Some other divisions, like the 12th Armored Division was one of them, chose to group all these platoons together as independent, as single companies, so an extra company on top of their armored infantry battalions. But a lot of the infantry divisions chose to just attach this extra platoon to one company in each regiment in the division. So this is about one of the platoons in the 99th Infantry Division, but it is part of an ongoing, very early research rabbit hole that I'm getting into about these platoons. Because to go back to the 16th Infantry Regiment, they had one of these platoons. Company B of the 16th had one at one point late in the war. These platoons didn't make it to the front until just after the Battle of the Bulge, but they remained with these divisions right up until the end of the war. What's really interesting is the War Department actually ran a survey of the officers and enlisted men who served in the companies with these platoons. And they found that these white officers and white enlisted men, who may not have been the most enlightened on subjects such as race at that time, actually grew to respect black soldiers more after fighting with them. In fact, one officer of the 16th Infantry, not the 16th, definitely in the 1st Division, I think it might have been actually of the 18th Infantry Regiment, which was also in the 1st Division, and they also had a platoon, said his men love fighting alongside these black soldiers. So it was an interesting survey that showed that, hey, maybe if the Army tried to integrate, it would actually work out pretty good. That made some people very upset. So the survey was buried and classified, and it's not until, actually not sure when it got unburied, but you can actually access the entire report that has all the results of the survey through the Harry S. Truman Library, which is just, you should do it. It's fascinating. But yeah, this is the beginning of something that I'm slowly working on, because I really want to reconstruct the story of the 5th Platoon attached to B Company of the 16th Infantry. That's something that I really think no one's ever talked about it. I tried I tried looking up the 16th Infantry Association, see if they had anything on it. They didn't have anything on it. So I'm beginning a slow, most likely very slow, research on this little subject because it is genuinely fascinating. But yeah. So yeah, that's all I have for tonight. Didn't really plan out that much. This day did kind of sneak up on me. It's been a busy couple of days with many streams, all relatively close together. But yeah, thank you all for watching tonight. Or if you're watching the recording, thank you for watching the recording. And be sure to check out Bowery Mick History on all the social media platforms and all the podcast platforms. And if you aren't already, follow us here on Twitch. We do cool things sometimes. Sometimes there's some planning. But yeah. Thank you. Have a good night. Or day. Or whenever the fuck it is when you're watching this.